Hi. Right now, millions of people are walking away from everything they have built. High paying careers, long term relationships, social circles they have spent decades cultivating. To the outside world, it looks like self destruction. Let's talk about today why spiritually awakened people are leaving society. So, today we will discuss the Carl Jung's thoughts on this topic. Carl Jung has saw this coming over 70 years ago. He called it the inevitable crisis of the awakened soul, and he believed it wasn't collapse, but humanity's most important evolution. Today, I'll reveal the five psychological reasons Jung identified for why awakened people must leave society, the shadow work that makes staying impossible, and the profound purpose he saw in this mass exodus. What you are about to discover might explain that unbearable restlessness you have been feeling. Here is what Young understood that the most people have missed. When you awaken spiritually, you don't just see through society illusions. Your entire nervous system begins rejected them. It's not a choice anymore. It becomes a biological imperative. Your body literally cannot tolerate what it once accepted. The young believed this wasn't bug in human psychology. It was a feature designed to push humanity towards its next evolutionary leap. But here is where it gets fascinating. Carl Jung called it destination of the persona. Most people don't realize they are wearing a mask until it starts cracking. This mask, what Carl Jung termed the persona, is every role you have learned to play. The professional you, the social you, the family you. It's not fake exactly, it's adaptive. It helped you survive, but here is what happens during spiritual awakening. You start seeing the mask as separate from your true self. Suddenly, you are watching yourself perform in meetings, pretend to care about small talk, fake enthusiasm for things that feel hollow. It's like becoming conscious during a dream and realizing you have been sleepwalking your entire life. Young documented case after case of successful individuals who reached this point and couldn't continue. One patient, a prominent banker, told Carl Jung, I sit in board meetings discussing millions, and all I think is we are all pretending this matters. We are all acting out rules in a play nobody wants to be in, but everyone too afraid to leave the stage. This is not depression, it is clarity. And once you see the performance, you can't unsee it, but it gets more intense. Because when your false self starts dying, society doesn't celebrate your authenticity, it punishes it. Co workers sense you are not playing alone anymore. Family members feel threatened by your refusal to maintain old dynamics. Friends drift away because your presence reminds them they are wearing masks too. Kalyang was brutally honest about this. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privileges of owning yourself. This ownership of self, what Young called individualization, requires leaving the spaces where your false self is demanded. You literally cannot complete your psychological evolution while performing your old role. It's not about judgment or superiority, it's about incompatibility. And an awakened conscious trying to operate through a false persona is like trying to run new software on outdated hardware. What will happen? The system will crash. And this crash leads directly to the second transformation. This is where Jung's work gets revolutionary. Most people think awakening means becoming more light, more positive, more spiritual. Jung said opposite. True awakening requires descending into your shadow, all the parts of yourself society taught you to hide, deny, repress. Here is the problem. Modern society is built on shadow projection. We externalize our darkness onto others. Other political parties, others nation, other races, other classes. This projection is what maintains social cohesion. Everyone agrees who the bad guys are. And this agreement creates tribal belonging. But when you start integrating your shadow, something terrifying happens. You can't project anymore. You see your own capacity for everything you judge in others, your own greed when you condemn billionaires, your own unconsciousness when you judge the sleeping masses. Young wrote, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But here is what he didn't say loud enough. When you stop projecting, you become deeply disturbing to those who still need their projections. I will give you a real example. During spiritual awakening, many people recognize their own narcissistic shadows, the parts that crave specialness, superiority, entitlement, or also enlightenment itself as an ego achievement. When you own this instead of projecting it, you stop playing the game of who is more evolved. But in spiritual communities that run on hidden hierarchies of consciousness, your refusal to play makes you dangerous. You can't condemn the unconsciousness masses because you see your own unconsciousness. You can't rage against the system because you recognize your own participation in it. You can't even fully blame those who hurt you because you see how you have hurt others in similar ways. This isn't about excusing harmful behavior. It's about recognizing what Jung called the collective shadow. We are all participating in the darkness we claim to oppose. And once you say this, you can't participate in society's projection games anymore. Society needs its scapegoats, its villains, and others to define itself against. When you withdraw your projections, you withdraw the energy that maintains these social structures. You become psychological unusable to the collective, and the collective, sensing this, begins to push you out. Most people stop here. But the third transformation changes everything. Young discovered something that sounds mystical but is psychologically precise. Awakened consciousness doesn't experience time the way society demands. He called this the reality of the psyche. The fact that psychological time is circular, synchronistic, meaningful in ways but that defy clock time. Think about how society functions: schedules, deadlines, 5 year plans, retirement savings. Everything is built on linear time. The assumption that life moves from point A to point B, that progress means moving forward, that success can be measured in accumulated years of achievement. But here is what happens in awakening: you start experiencing what Jung called synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that suggests reality is more like a web than a line. Past, present, and future start bleeding onto each other. You have dreams that predicts events. You think of someone and they call. You see patterns and symbols that seem to be speaking directly to you. Young wasn't being mystical here. He was observing that consciousness, when it expands, begins operating according to what he called a causal orderness, an organizing principle beyond cause and effect. This is why awakened people often seem out of sync and with society. They literally are. They are operating on psychological time while society demands mechanical time. One of Jung's patients, a successful engineer, described it perfectly. I sit in planning meetings where we map out the next quarter and I want to laugh. Not from arrogance but from absurdity. I am experiencing time as this flowing, living thing where past traumas are more real than tomorrow's deadlines, where a dream feels more significant than a business contract, where a moment of presence contains more value than a year of productivity. You can't explain this to someone living in linear time. You do your tell your boss that you can't commit to the 5-year plan because you are experiencing temporal dissolution. How do you explain that scheduling feels like violence to your psyche when you are learning to follow what Jung called the natural rhythm of the individualization process? This temporal incompatibility becomes unbearable. You are asked to show up at 9 a.m. when your soul is still processing a dream. You are expected to move on from grief when psychological time has you still in the depths of loss. You are pushed to your plan, your future, when you are being called to stay present towards dying. Society's time is mechanical, the self's time is organic. And once you have shifted to organic time, mechanical time feels like prison. If you are recognizing these patterns, you are false self dying, unable to project shadows anymore, feeling out of sync with mechanical time. You are not going crazy. You are going sane in an insane world. The living isn't giving up, it's growing up into who you really are. Share in the comments which of these transformations you are experiencing most intensely. Your honesty might give someone else permission to honor their own psychological evolution. So please share your comments. Now, these next two reasons reveal why Jung believed this exodus wasn't just personal, it was collective destiny. This is where Jung's genius becomes almost prophetic. He understood that awakened individuals don't just become conscious of their own unconscious, they become painfully aware of the collective unconscious surrounding them. And this awareness, he argued, creates an almost unbearable psychological burden. Imagine suddenly being able to see everyone's shadow, not through judgment, but through direct perception. You walk into a room and feel the unprogressed grief 3 generations deep. You sit in a meeting and sense the childhood wounds driving every power play. You watch the news and see not current events but ancient patterns repeating. What Young called archetypical possessions playing out in mass scale. Young wrote, the meeting with oneself is at first the meeting with one's own shadow. The shadow is a tight passage, a narrow door whose painful constrictions no one is spared, who goes down to the deep well. But here is what happens after you have gone through that narrow door. You realize almost everyone around you is still avoiding it. This isn't about feeling superior, it's about
energetic, overwhelmed. When you have developed what Jung called psychological consciousness, you become a kind of lighting rod for the unconscious material around you. Other people's repressed emotions, denied shadows, and unintegrated traumas start constellating around your awareness. One of the young female patients described it hauntingly. I used to think I was highly sensitive. Now I understand I am highly conscious. I don't just feel others' emotion, I feel what they refuse to feel. I carry not just my own shadow, but the shadows of everyone who won't carry theirs. It's like being awake in a world of sleepwalkers and absorbing all the dreams they won't remember. This is why awakened people often develop chronic illness, anxiety, or exhaustion that no doctor can explain. They are not just processing their own psychological material, they are involuntarily processing the collective unconsciousness of their environment. Young called this participation mystic a psychological state where boundaries dissolved and you carry what isn't yours. Society doesn't just fail to recognize this burden, it actively exploits it. Awakened individuals become unofficial therapists for everyone around them. Energy vampires seek them out. Narcissists target them because they sense someone who sees deeply and might offer the unconditional acceptance they crave. Unconscious family system designate them as the identified patient, the one who carries the symptoms of the entire system's dysfunction. And here is the crucial point Young made. You cannot heal or integrate at the level of consciousness while surrounded by those committed to unconsciousness. It's like trying to get sober in a bar. The environment itself maintains the disease. This is why isolation isn't antisocial for awakened beings, it's psychological necessity. What looks like withdrawal is actually what Jung called the transcendent function, creating space for a new level of consciousness to emerge that can bridge the opposites and birth something genuinely new. But the fifth and final reason is perhaps the most profound of all. Jung's most revolutionary idea was that within each person exists what he called the self. Not the ego, not the persona, but an organizing center of the whole psyche that knows your true purpose. And here is the terrifying truth: the self's agenda has nothing to do with society's agenda. Society wants you productive, compliant, consuming. The self wants you whole, authentic. Society values external achievement. The self values internal integration. Society measures success by accumulation. The self measures it by how much illusion you have shed. Young observed that when people reach a certain level of awakening, they start receiving what he called demands from the self. Powerful internal directives that often contradict everything that seems logical or safe. Leave the marriage that looks perfect but feels dead. Quit the job that pays well but kills your soul. Move to a place that makes no sense but calls to your depths. These aren't whims or midlife crises. They are what Jung called the self regulating function of the psyche, your deepest wisdom correcting course, often dramatically. The self doesn't care about your comfort, it cares about your completion. Here is what makes this so difficult: the self Calling often requires betraying everyone else's expectation. Your parents' dreams for you, your partner need your security, your own ego's attachment to identity and status. Young was blunt about this. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, but that privilege requires what feels like betrayal to everyone who needed you to stay who you were or who they wanted you to be. One of the Young's most profound case studies involved a successful doctor who kept having dreams of living in a simple cabin in the mountains, writing poetry. For years, he dismissed these dreams as escapist fantasy, but they intensified, became demanding, turned into physical symptoms, chest pains that had no medical cause, anxiety that no medication could touch. Finally, at 52, he left everything. His colleagues called it a breakdown. His family staged interventions. But Young understood this wasn't pathology, it was the self demanding its true life. The man spent his remaining years in solitude, writing profound spiritual poetry that was published after his death. He told Young, I had to choose between dying as a successful doctor or living as a failed poet. The self chose life. This is the ultimate reason awakened people leave society. They are called to a life that society cannot understand, validate, support, or not beneficial for them. It's not about rejecting the world, it's about accepting a mission that requires living the world's terms. Jung saw this happening on a mass scale. He predicted that as humanity approached what he called the spiritual problem of modern man, more and more individuals would be called to live collective life and pioneer new ways of being, not as escapism, but as evolution, not as spiritual bypassing, but as psychological necessity. The self's call is non negotiable. You can't delay it, meditate it, or medicate it, rationalize it away. But Young observed that it only gets louder, more insistent, more creative in its disruption of your false life. Physical symptoms, relationships, crises, professional failures. But here is what most people miss about Young's vision. He didn't see this exodus as the end. He saw it as the beginning. The leaving isn't about permanent isolation, it's about what he called the return of the transformed. Young understood that awakened individuals don't leave society to escape it, but to transform at the depth that's impossible while embedded in collective unconsciousness. It's like a caterpillar entering the desolation isn't death. It's metamorphosis. But you cannot become a butterfly while other caterpillars are telling you to stay in formation. He observed a pattern. Those who honored the living, who completed their individualization in solitude or small conscious communities, eventually developed what he called the transcendent function, an ability to bridge the conscious and unconscious, the individual and collective, the spiritual and material. These individuals don't return to society as it was. They return as that Young called carriers of consciousness. People whose very presence catalyzes awakening in others, not through preaching or teaching, but through embodiment. They have integrated their shadows so deeply that they don't trigger others' projections. They have transcendent linear time so completely that they bring presence to every interaction. They have answered the self's call so fully that they inspire others to hear their own. Jung saw this as humanity's evolutionary strategy. Not everyone awakens at once. That would be collective chaos. Instead, individuals are called out, transformed, and returned to seed new consciousness. Each wave makes it easier for the next. What seems like societal breakdown is actually breakthrough in slow motion. Here is the ultimate paradox Young identified. You can only truly serve society by leaving it. You can only heal the collective by separating from it. You can only bring light by first descending into your own darkness alone. This isn't spiritual bypassing or elite escapism, it's psychological law. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot lead where you haven't been. You cannot awaken others while you are still asleep. The leaving is preparation for the different kind of return, not to fit back in, but to help birth what's trying to emerge. Jung saw the signs everywhere in his time: the mental health crisis, the meaning crisis, the spiritual emptiness despite material abundance. He predicted it would intensify until enough individuals answered the call to leave, transform, and return with new consciousness. We are living in that intensification now. The mass exodus isn't societal or social collapse, it's social evolution. Each person who leaves to answer their self's calling weakness the old structure and strengthens what's being born. It looks like destruction because we can only see what's dying, not what's gestating. So, here is what Young wants you to understand. You are feeling the unbearable pressure to leave your career, your relationship, your entire way of life. You are not failing. You are being called. Your discomfort isn't weakness, it's growth trying to happen. The isolation isn't punishment, it's preparation. Your false self needs to die for your true self to be born. Your shadows need integration for your light to be genuine. Your participation in collective time needs to end your unique timing to emerge. The collective unconscious needs to be left for individual consciousness to flourish. This isn't easy. Young never promised it would be. He promised it would be real. The death of the false self, shadow integration, temporal shift, collective burden, and the self call all weave together into one moment. That is individualization, the becoming of who you truly are. And in a world of illusions, reality is the ultimate revelation. If you are being called to leave, if you are already in the leaving, or if you have left and are finding your way in the unknown, you are not alone. You are part of what Jung saw as humanity's most important transformation. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to join thousands of souls navigating this evolution together. Share in comments what you are being called to live. Your courage might be exactly what someone else needs to see today. And remember what Carl Jung told us: who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Sometimes awakening means leaving everything outside to discover everything inside. The world needs what you will become on the other side of the transformation. So trust the living, trust the process, trust yourself to dive within deeper into Jung's revolutionary psychology and what it means for your spiritual awakening. Thank you so much for your time.